Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coaches Corner University podcast. I am your host, Paul O'Neid, and this podcast is sponsored by Coaches Corner University. Funny enough, we have made a lot of changes over at the website in an attempt to further elevate the coaching profession. And from now on, our Coaches Corner Education Collective, which is our membership portion of the website, will be a one-time purchase for lifetime access, no more subscription. And from now on, if you listen to the podcast and you use code BEEFCAKE300, you will get $300 off your membership, which means you pay $50 for over 200 hours of continuing education lectures. So that's once again, Beefcake300 at www.coachescorneru.com. Now that that's out of the way, big sponsorship guy over at the podcast, I get to introduce you to a great friend of mine, someone who I've known for a few years now, and actually coached me on my nutrition for about a year, Simon Chang. Simon, welcome to the podcast, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to reconnect again. As you kind of said, this is a time where we can kind of reconnect, talk about stuff in business, and get some content out of it.
Exactly. I joke that selfishly I use the podcast just to talk to my friends about stuff, and it just so happens that my friends all do cool shit. So
yeah,
people benefit. We try. You have had an interesting career in coaching. You've been part of a big company when you worked with Hybrid Performance Method. Now you branched out and worked with another company, and now you're working on your own. So can you give people a little bit of a background on how maybe you got into coaching and where it's brought you to now?
Yeah. Do we want the long form, when I started with Hybrid, or further back?
Whatever, dude. Whatever when you started with Hybrid, because that's when kind of you got more serious about it.
Yeah. So when I started with Hybrid, I was already coaching a little bit, but got hired by Hybrid as a nutrition coach and worked under one of your coaches now, Francesco, who is great. He essentially mentored me on how to coach, and I realized I had no idea what I was doing. I thought I was a good coach, and kind of like that Kruger Effect, I believe it's called. Thought I knew it all. Then I'm like, I don't know shit. Started with Hybrid, got mentored by Chesco. And this first year, I was just all about learning. Took on clients, listened to Chesco, took a bunch of courses, and ended up, slowly getting referrals, slowly working with people, including yourself. You reached out, and it was interesting seeing you reach out. I'm like, I guess I kind of know what I'm doing if I have people like Paul reaching out, you have faith in me.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I started working with Hybrid as a coach. Slowly worked my way up to become director of training services. So essentially managing the training side of the business. So we launched an app. So I helped launch the app, hired some of the developers for that as well.
You learned how to code?
Yeah, learned how to code. Learned a lot. It was a great experience. Learned how to even hire people and manage people. But yeah, launched the app. So we worked when we launched it, our first program was with Matt Frazier.
Mm-hmm.
As some of you may know, if you do CrossFit. So obviously a great CrossFitter. The launch went well, and slowly started stacking other coaches on there, like Eddie Hall, even my girlfriend Hunter, Olympic weightlifter, U.S. Olympic weightlifter. And ended up doing that, and slowly branched out, left Hybrid. Great experience. I loved working with them, but wanted to possibly branch out on my own. I had another offer that I accepted, but after a week or so, I realized 2 weeks maybe, I'm like, this is not for me, and that's okay. And I really want to do something on my own.
Cool.
Yeah.
So how was that transition going from working for another company and essentially having a lot of your leads provided for you? I mean, when Hybrid was at its peak, it was literally a lead generating machine.
Oh yeah.
To jump into the deep waters of entrepreneurship and have to fend for yourself. Was that something that you were afraid of?
Yeah, it was very much, I think, one of the reasons I may have stayed with them for so long because I already knew in my head, like I eventually wanted to do things on my own. And I think working my way up with hybrid and them allowing me like flexibility in time in terms of like how to manage the training business, even somewhat of the nutrition, kind of gave me a taste for like, I'm like, I think we should do things this way. And they're like, yep. And we did it this way and it does well.
Hmm.
But obviously that's when you're like using someone else's money to grow a business. So
Right.
when it's kind of like I knew I wanted to do that, but it's different when you're using someone else's money. But yeah, I was scared at first. And I believe that's why I initially accepted another role. But then as soon as I got into the role, I'm obviously not, up here in terms of position. And I'm just like, I don't want to do things how you guys do things. Like, I think there's so many holes or things that can be done better. And after a week or so, I'm just like, why don't I just do this on my own? Like, what if a kind of phrase I like to repeat in my head, like, what if fear wasn't a thing?
I love
What
that.
if there was no fear? Let's pretend you had no fear. And like, what would I do? I'm asking myself, what would I do? And I would start my own business. So it's like, all right, that's what I'm going to do because I'm choosing to work with someone else out of fear. So I did that and ended up actually going way better than I thought the first month. And I was pretty much close to my max capacity. I think thankful for my other experiences coaching, but close to my max capacity after my first month or so, thankfully.
Well, I remember having a conversation with you at Showdown, like when we were down competing. And one of the things you said was like, number one, when you're working for someone else, you have to carry a higher capacity of clients because
Yeah.
you get paid less per client. I
Yeah,
remember
exactly.
I remember for Olivia when she was a hybrid, funny enough, yeah, like my wife Olivia, Francesco who works with us, and yourself all work together at hybrid. Liv had over 100 clients. And when she transitioned to self-employment, she was making more money working with like 18 people than she
Yeah.
was working with 100. And it was a bit of an eye opener for her to realize that the scalability of income is so much better when self-employed, but all the pressure is on you to generate those leads.
Yeah.
Did you, I mean, I'm hesitant to ask the question because I feel like there's some sort of non-compete potentially, but like when you left hybrid, I'm sure a lot of your clients wanted to come with you.
So for me, I wasn't coaching at that time. So I was already,
Oh, you had
because I
already
went
stepped
from,
away.
well, because remember, I started as a nutrition coach and then worked my way up to essentially director of training services which
Oh,
was kind of like a COO-ish position.
okay.
So I wasn't coaching for about a year at that time, but thankfully I felt like I did well coaching and I had 200 clients. So when I started coaching again, I had a lot of people reach back out, which I think helped a lot.
Awesome.
So it's kind of like there wasn't necessarily like I wasn't poaching, I wasn't
No,
like meshing people, so there wasn't necessarily a non-compete because I wasn't coaching for a year already.
it's a great lesson to be teased out of the conversation. And that one of the things that I have clients do when they work with me as a mentor, the lowest hanging fruit in terms of customer acquisition is people you already have relationships with. And when it comes
100%.
to having a previous coaching relationship with that person, you already did a great job with them. Why wouldn't they want to come back and work with you? So if
Mm-hmm.
you had been with, 200 clients at a time over the course of a couple of years, that might be like 300, 400 potential people that might be able to sign on with you. Even if you are able to sign 10% of those people, that's a great starting roster and you're probably already making more money.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it was. And at hybrid, I was big into data, and I think that's what helped me work my way up. A lot of my clients, like almost 20, a little over, no, so 40% were referrals. So although it was a lead generating system, most were referrals. So that helped a lot because it's like people I was already, and I'm doing this a lot more, is just kind of like, even if I am not like, say, looking for clients, I'll still message people like every 2, 3 months, like, hey, how's it going? Like,
Yeah.
you know, how's it going? Keeping a conversation with them. So it's normal when I'm leaving hybrid if I'm still like talking to the client, even though I haven't coached for a year. So a lot of them
Yeah.
are like, hey, I see you're coaching now.
Yeah.
How do I start?
I call that watering your garden. Because I mean,
Yeah,
if
I like that.
you start a garden every new season, like every 4 seasons, you have to rewater the garden and regrow it. But the thing in business is like you have so many seeds planted over the years that if you're consistently running through your list of past clients and just keeping in touch with them, and it does not
Yeah,
have to be, it shouldn't be a sales conversation, but inevitably
exactly.
it does lead there because if you made a great impact on them, they're going to want to work with you again. And I think referral based business is something that people nowadays always want to focus on customer acquisition, customer acquisition, customer acquisition. But if you have a referral based business, you never have to worry about customer acquisition and you keep your clients for way longer.
Yeah, no,
So,
exactly. You never have to worry about acquisition. You can have a client for a really long time. Like we're either increasing the revenue from more people or increasing the lifetime value of that customer. And I'm really big on increasing that lifetime value and
me too.
meaning like they're working for me for longer. And then what was it? Treating my next customer, someone who's working with me, kind of like they're my last. Like they're meaning like
Oh, I like
they're the if they're treating them like my last, meaning like they're going to do the marketing for me. Like if I treat them like they're going to do the marketing for me, they usually end up doing that. And most of my clients end up referring at least one person. Again, I kind of track data for that, but over 50% of my clients refer another person.
now.
Sometimes right after I sign them up.
Now,
It's great.
when you're working with a client, is there any specific practice that you implement to increase the likelihood of them referring, or is it just something about you as being a nice guy?
Asking,
Ask. Oh,
asking.
you mean you asked the question?
Yeah, no, I asked the obvious, but it's especially if they're on like say I'm having my normal monthly call with a client and they're like just saying like how I've helped them with XYZ and we're talking about it and all their progress and like would do you know anyone else that is kind of like struggling with this and wants to get from like here to here? And they're like, oh yeah, actually, okay, do you mind like connecting me with them and like just having a conversation about it?
I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with is just asking the question, like asking for the referral. Um, and it can be like, especially depending on how you do it, I think it can be a little bit icky because it's essentially like,
Yeah,
hey, you're paying me money. Do you want to get other people to pay me money?
yeah,
And when you think about it like that, you're like, okay, that's really skeezy. But if the person's really happy, it's in the matter of a conversation. And especially if that person is someone that really fits that ideal client avatar for you, not
exactly.
being afraid to say, hey, I really enjoy working with you. Do you have any friends like you who you think would be interested in working with me?
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly. Especially again, if you help someone so much and they see the benefits, and like I was just talking to a client, like he saw the benefits of like he's not scared of carbs anymore. It's been years, he's lost weight, he's feeling good. And it's like, do you know anyone else that kind of like is going like struggling with carbs and wants to like feel that way? And he's like, yeah, a lot of people. uh,
every person.
yeah.
So
And it's like they're happy to help and refer.
So what would you say is your like ideal client avatar now? Like, because I'm sure
Yeah,
I mean, when you were at hybrid working with nutrition only, I'm sure that was a very diverse population of people. In
yeah,
transitioning into your own business, have you had to niche down or have you chosen to?
yeah. No, I'm very much usually only work with entrepreneurs now. So business owners, entrepreneurs, they have their own business just because I also just like talking about business and connecting with people and learning about their business. And just one of the things I struggled with leaving at hybrid when I was leaving hybrid was like trying to run my own business, but also walk the walk, stay in shape, stay in shape, work out, sleep on point, manage stress with like you're working 40, 50 hours trying to build your business. So I struggled with that. And I'm like, I feel like I know what I'm doing. I imagine other entrepreneurs who kind of don't know what they're doing in terms of fitness and nutrition may struggle with that more than me. So that kind of became my ideal client. And I love working with those people,
What I found interesting about you is you post on social media like once a quarter.
which is bad. I wanted to touch on that, but go ahead.
No, and that's why I wanted to touch on it. So you managed to maintain a full roster of clients while not posting on social media on any sort of regular basis. That has to be witchcraft, Simon.
It's not the best thing in terms of long-term strategy, I think, but it's almost like I'm still at capacity and still kind of like I had two people last month where I'm like I have to put you on a waiting list. Um, but it's the referral game, but it's not the best thing. I do think long term, like don't if you see me not posting and like think, oh, you don't have to post to grow, it's like I do think it's extremely helpful. And I
Mhm.
also think like it's helpful not only to get clients, but to retain your clients as well. Like
I agree.
there's some things you may not just like, you make a post and like you didn't have that conversation with that about them. But it's something I do want to get better at. It's kind of like, well, I'm doing what I want to do, so I don't necessarily, and I don't need clients. I'm kind of like justifying why I shouldn't post, but yeah.
Well, okay, let's play devil's advocate here because number one, I love playing devil's advocate. And number two, I personally believe that there are no rules, right? There are no rules in entrepreneurship. If you're growing and what you're doing is working and it's different than what the narrative is, who cares? Like, why change it? And so when I see someone like yourself is like, I don't really need to post on social media to keep my roster full. The strategies that I have to continue to generate new leads, new referrals, maybe repeat business, clients coming back is working, and you have a full roster, well, then you don't have a necessity for social media. You also put in the groundwork a long time ago to build your following. Like you have over 20,000 followers. So it's not as though you have 1,000 followers and you'd be starting from scratch.
Yeah.
When and if you do decide to go on social media, you're kind of starting at the middle of the race.
Yeah.
Where I see people go wrong is number one, they invest all of their time and energy into social media and forget about the referral based business.
Hmm.
Or number two, they don't provide a good enough service. And actually, I'll put number three up there too, which is where I think you alluded to with the long term growth strategy is you're capped now, but what if you diversify your offerings to allow yourself to handle more people? Where are those more people going to come from?
Yeah.
Does that ever play in your mind?
Exactly. No, exactly. Where are those people going to come from? And although I'm capped in terms of clients now, it's like I don't want my business capped, right?
Right.
Like I want more coaches. That's kind of one thing I'm kind of working through in the back end of like hiring a coach and setting up training with them. Um, but in order to hire a coach, I need a lead flow that's already like I have a good lead flow for myself to stay capped, but I need a
Mhm.
lead flow that's going to get them clients consistently, not hire a coach and like, let's wait a month for you to get two clients, three clients. Cause I kind of know what it's like. And just from my experience with hybrid, like it's nice just getting consistent clients, more buy in, and being able to pay the person a good amount per client, stuff like that.
Okay, so let's chat through this because this is an area where I have a bit of experience. We have, 7 coaches on our team including myself. We run a very different model. So there's a number of different models if people are unfamiliar with how you run like an assistant coach model. So
Yeah.
there is the way where you have the one face of the business who brings in all of the leads and then they hand off coaching responsibilities to their assistant coaches. All of these assistant coaches usually run the same kind of quote unquote system or protocol.
Hmm.
And in some cases, this might even be a ghost coaching situation where the client thinks they're being coached by the head coach, but they're actually being coached by somebody underneath them. So that's one model. The other model is similar to was a hybrid. Every coach kind of coaches their own way, their own people. You adhere to a similar service delivery model, but the leads are generated by that business and then the coaches coach.
Yeah.
There, then there's the third model, which is where we subscribe in that our coaches are all part of a team. We're all committed to the same goals. We all adhere to the same service delivery guidelines, but all of our coaches coach their own way. And I encourage them to build their own businesses underneath our umbrella. So if they bring in their own
Hmm.
clients, we only take admin fees. If we're generating the revenue, they still keep a large majority of that if we bring in the leads, they still keep a large majority of that revenue. There's no 50-50 splits at MAP, right? If you're
Yeah.
an assistant coach with us, you're getting at least 70% of your revenue.
Yeah.
So
No, that makes sense.
what model do you think, fits best with your business, or like what model are you leaning towards based on what you want to do?
Yeah, with what I'm leaning towards, it's a little bit of a mix. I would say is, of course, I want the person essentially kind of like not really building their own business, but like still posting. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't want them to have to worry about leads.
Right.
So I would be taking a larger share of revenue, and a part of the reason I would be showing them like I'm doing this through my ads and content.
Mm.
It's not like I'm just taking, say if the split was 50-50, it's not like I'm taking 50%, like say 20, 10, 15% of that would be towards ads is the route I'm thinking of going. I've seen other people do that successfully. And I do feel that it's a way to also get predictable revenue and keep a coach knowing like, if you want more clients, I'll scale the ads up type of thing.
Ads are a very interesting paradigm, especially for people. And I spoke with someone yesterday who's in the business coaching space, and he made a really important point in that if you're going to run ads, you have to have the infrastructure in the back end to, number one, support the cash flow required to run the ads on an ongoing basis, because you
Yep.
need to run the ads for at least 3 months for them to optimize. And number two, you need to be able to do something with the information when it comes in. I see too many people who are like, I'm going to run ads. It's like, run an ad. Are you a 40-year-old man interested in increasing their fitness and testosterone levels? DM me the word go for coaching. And they run that
Yeah.
ad and nothing happens.
Yeah.
Like,
And those are, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I think those are different style. Like those are, that's what you'd call a conversion ad or a messenger ad. And those are higher cost ads. And usually on average with like a coaching business, to get a client with that style of ad, you're spending $100 a day on that ad, 100 US
Mm-hmm.
a day. And typically you won't see a return on average for about 38 days from what I've seen and talked to with other business coaches. Where there are different style, like low hanging fruit ads where you can get acquisition a little faster. But it's usually like those style of ads, which most people are familiar with, are like they want to start there. Whereas like you should kind of start here and you're working your way up until you could spend $3,000 in ad spend, and expect with that style of ad a 5 to 10x ROAS. But yeah, with the ad I'm starting is kind of like, and I've ran it before. The ad I'm starting is here,
Mm-hmm.
and it's $15 a day, and I've saw a return in. I mean, I got a client in 3 days, so after $45 ad spend with like a 6 month contract. So like obviously a huge ROAS, but
Yeah, I think, well, that plays to the next point is like, do you know your lifetime value? Right. So
yeah,
if you know that it's going to cost you, let's ballpark and say you run the ad and you end up spending $300 to acquire a customer. And you might think, holy shit, like that's a lot of money. But if you're spending $300 to acquire a customer and you know your lifetime value is, say, 10 months at $300. Well, if you spend 300 and you make 3,000,
yeah, exactly.
that's a pretty good ROI.
Yeah,
But you have to have that initial $300 to be able to, or probably 10x that $300 to figure out what your acquisition cost is going to be before
yeah,
you actually know how much, you probably know your lifetime value already, because if you've been coaching long enough, you know how long you keep your clients. But then you look at it, it's like, okay, well, now in your situation, you're going to be running ads to acquire clients for somebody else. So that lifetime value, if you're only making, let's say, 20% of that lifetime value, you're going to want to make sure that your cost of acquisition is so much lower. And this is why running ads becomes so complicated.
yeah.
And
No, it
knowing
can be
you've
very.
probably gone through the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I've gone through it, and I use, as you were saying, Go High Level. I have a white label Go High Level, and I know my acquisition cost for a client and lifetime value, like off the top of my head. But I think if someone's just getting started and doesn't have that experience, like they're running into issues for sure. They're going to be wasting money.
So let me ask you this. We're on the topic of marketing coaching. How do you feel about discounting your coaching rates?
I personally don't.
I absolutely hate it. I'm like, whenever I see coaches who are like, sign up with me now and get $50 off or one free month coaching when you purchase, however, I'm like, all I think is that, wow, you are devaluing this service
Exactly.
and you are not going to get the type of client that you want.
Yeah. It's just like other companies when they're having, say, discounts for Black Friday, the companies that there's data around this. I don't know that data off the top of my head, but companies who do really massive sales on Black Friday, like 80% of the revenue ends up being on Black Friday over time.
Mm-hmm.
Because people just wait for the discount, and like that's not the type of service I want to run. So I personally don't do any discounts anymore, unless someone were to like do a long contract with like a paid in full.
One thing that I always come back to whenever I think of the way, okay, let's use the way you market your business as an example, but as that integrates into the entire ethos of your business. If you're running your business like we do on the premise that we are raising the bar. So
Mm-hmm.
raising the bar is associated with the highest level of service possible, which means that any experience a customer gets with us is going to be the best experience possible that we're able to provide. That
Yeah, I
has to
love that.
extend, that has to extend to everything that you do. That has to extend to the quality of the content that you put out, the quality of the resources that you're giving away for free for your building your email list. And that also has to come to like what sort of ads or marketing that you do for your business. If you're trying to associate, I had one of my mentees was like, I love what you're doing with, associating yourself with a premium brand. I want to do the same. I'm going to
Yeah,
buy these business cards. And he's like, I want to put gold foil on my business cards, but it's going to cost me twice as much. I said, listen, if you want to be associated with high quality, that has to be high quality across the board. Business cards is
exactly.
part of that. Even the blank prints that you're going to make t-shirts on is part of that. That alignment is so crucial. And I think, you're right along with the thought process of if you're working, especially yourself, you're working with professionals, with entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Like they're going to see right through that bullshit.
Oh, 100%. One of my clients, I won't say his name, but like his company does 100 million a year. Like, do you think I'm going to, and if you sign now, you'll get 10%. Like
He'd
at
probably
the
be
end of the
more
day, he just
likely
wants
to not
results.
sign. Well, he like if he
Yeah,
saw
no,
that,
exactly.
he'd be like, "Well, I'd rather
He'd
pay
raise his
more."
eyebrow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like he'd be like, all right, like, are you
I
that
really wish
desperate? Like,
whenever I see people do that, like The Rock when he raises, I'm like, "Fuck, I wish I could do that."
yeah,
It'd be so
yeah,
much cooler. No, I love that. I love that you're aligned in that way, and I think it's a great lesson for young coaches, especially from the beginning, to align yourself with something that is true to your vision for the company, because everyone sees through it, even if you don't think they do.
yeah,
Um,
100%.
how do you feel about like? Have you ever done? Okay, actually, you mentioned 6-month contract. So when you said you sold a 6-month contract off a 4-day ad spend or 3-day ad spend, how do you feel about building your business based on uh, like large lump sum purchases versus monthly recurring revenue? How do you balance the two?
Yeah, no, a really good question. So I like a mix of both. Um, but for me, especially as I'm starting to run ads, it obviously helps to get like, especially if I know the acquisition cost for my client per ad. Like, let's say it's $125 of ad spend. I wouldn't want someone on like a monthly thing because I want basically I want the return on ad spend back and then some to put more into ads. Um,
Okay.
but it kind of depends. Um, there's a lot. Like obviously, recurring revenue is great, but like there's advantages to lump sum. But yeah, I like a mix of both. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think
Kind of.
also just the way I'm presenting my coaching to these entrepreneurs, like it's not. Like I'm selling them on the result. So like
Okay. Well, yeah.
this isn't a gym membership that you pay monthly because there's no like result. Like it's not a subscription. Like I'm selling you on the result. This is the investment of the result.
I think that's an interesting point to make because that plays very well to the population that you're working with.
Exactly. Like it works well with what I'm doing.
So where I differ in my personal approach and with Master Athletic in that we sell our clients on the journey. We sell our
Yeah.
clients on the process by which we're achieving these results and the changes that you're going to make within yourself. We sell our clients on the relationship. So a lot of what we do is based on increasing our MRR, so our monthly recurring revenue. We don't
Mm-hmm.
really do any bulk payments for that reason. That all started initially because I hate inconsistencies in my monthly income.
Mm-hmm.
I like knowing that I have consistent monthly income across the board rather than having like a 5K month, a 20K month, a 6K month, and having to, especially for my expenses and my spending and
No,
stuff
of
like that.
course.
But you made a great point. I think that the strategy with which you package your services and products needs to align with that ideal client avatar. Because
Exactly.
an executive, yeah, they might stay with you concurrently on 6-month contracts. Like they might renew on a recurring basis because they love the results that they're getting. But if you said, hey, it's going to be this much a month, you can't necessarily tie that to an outcome.
Yeah.
Was that something that you had to learn, or is that something that like you're still kind of
It,
refining?
no, it's something I've learned. And then like in order to help that recurring revenue as well, usually like on the back end, say if I sign someone for 6 months, as I continue to work with them, usually I'll do something monthly.
Okay, so the 6-month initial contract transitions to a monthly.
Yeah, typically that's like the average person 6 month, and then on the back end when we renew, and on average I'm renewing 86% of people, it's going to be something monthly, and then it's a higher ticket up front, and like the monthly rate seems like relatively cheap. It is relatively like cheaper month to month, or when they're paying monthly versus. Does that make sense? Like let's say
Yeah.
the 6 months was like, let's say it was 3 grand, so whatever that ends up being monthly, on the
Five.
back end like their monthly price is going to be lower, so
Yeah, that
it's
makes total
cheaper, and it's something like, it's kind of like they saw the result but they love the progress and they want to keep going,
yeah.
and they can keep
That's
going for however long they want.
that's similar to a model that's being pushed quite heavily in the like Jason Phillips NCI kind of crew. Not sure if you're familiar with Jason Phillips, but he's kind of grown in the business coaching space. I went to his conference in Orlando, which didn't really enjoy, but anyway, I want to have him on the podcast to tell him that face to face. So, but what they do is because they still want to have cash in hand. The model that he pitches is instead of charging a high ticket monthly price, you charge a lump sum up front and then a lower monthly price. So
Yeah.
it protects you should that client leave because you already have cash in hand. But as the contract extends itself, the total amount spent by the client kind of goes down. So
Yeah.
instead of charging, let's say we're talking about a 6-month coaching, instead of charging $500 a month and 6,000 over the course of 6 months, you maybe charge 300 a month, but charge 2 grand at the front end.
Yeah.
So you equate 6,000 over the course of the lifetime value of the client, but it's front loaded. Um, which works well, especially if you're spending money on ads because you get that cash in hand to reinvest into the ads. And it's something that we've thought about. The model that we've actually adopted is instead of doing a large lump sum payment up front, we do an
Mm-hmm.
onboarding fee. So
Oh, okay.
so you do your monthly fee, but to get your program set up by your coach, it varies by coach. Like for myself, it's $250 to set up. So your first month with me is actually 1,000, and then 750 ongoing.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
I,
go ahead.
sorry, I was gonna say, I just really love that we're able to have these open conversations about these things because I think these are the conversations that happen behind closed doors. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I try to do with the podcast is show people that this business can be done a whole different number of ways
Oh, for
depending on
sure.
what you're doing, and none of it is wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. None of it, like whether someone's doing monthly high ticket, none of it's necessarily wrong. Some of it's like what you feel comfortable with. And even one of the reason I do like a higher ticket is so I can potentially spend more money in ads. So I know, because you mentioned like predictable revenue, like that high and low. If you're
Mhm.
spending money on ads and you know how to do it well, you know, like if I'm putting 1,000 in, I get 5,000 out. So you can make predictable revenue with that, and charging higher up front, like that high ticket off the initial uh, contract gives you more money to spend in ads. And then, you know, like if I can spend this much in ads, I get this many clients next month. So
Have
can
you
end
found
up being predictable.
have you found that the dollar amount that you spend in ads is linearly scalable to return on investment?
No, like as I was saying, kind of like with those conversion ads, it's like 5 to 10x ROAS. But like, yeah, you say if you're spending 3 grand in ads, and some of it I'm talking about like people's business I know, like if they're spending 3 grand in ads, like if they spend 6K, they might end up making the same. So it's kind of like you have to
That's
see,
interesting.
not necessarily linear.
It's interesting that you say that because I spoke with somebody recently who said, the cool thing about Facebook ads and Instagram ads and Google ads is that if you know that your cost of acquisition is $100 per client, if it's $100 per client, you spend 500, you get 5 clients. So he said he was telling me that it's very linearly scalable, and you're saying the opposite. I've always been
At
skeptical
like
of it.
at a lower, if you're spending $500, it could be seen as linear for sure. Once you're spending 3, 6, like that's where it might be like you're spending 3 grand, and if you were to spend 5 grand, the same outcome.
Interesting. Um, was there any hesitation for you to jump into the ad spend right off the bat? Because I mean, for me, it's something I've actively avoided. Mostly because I don't necessarily know a lot about it, but I know that the potential ROI is very big. Did you have any hesitation jumping into that?
I did, and that's why I hired someone to learn. So I was kind of like, let me figure out what I'm doing and like make it all make sense. And like I have KPIs in terms of like when I should shut off an ad and where to start with an ad. Kind of like as I was saying, most commonly you'll see people start at like what I would call a conversion ad. Like I'm looking for 3 people who want to XYZ, DM me the word. Like that's an ad that wouldn't really convert well unless you're spending $100 a day. Can you
Right.
spend $100 a day? It's like, no, it's maybe don't do that. Like start at a different style, and like these are the KPIs, knowing like when to kill it, when not to kill it.
What have you found to be the most practical ad for your business to run?
Of what you'd call a follower funnel ad.
Okay.
So it's not an ask. It's like I'm making a post saying on how I help entrepreneurs. How I help entrepreneurs. This is how I help entrepreneurs essentially do XYZ. Again, like the result. Follow my content essentially if you want to learn or like about more about XYZ so you can get the result. So it's not a direct ask. I'm getting people to follow me, but the people I'm getting to follow me are entrepreneurs. And then it's potentially having a conversation with those people who follow me and getting them on a call and as a potential client. That's like a really good starting ad for people in terms of acquisition cost. And also, if someone has a low following, like we were talking about, it helps build their following of warm leads of people who are their ideal avatar.
Interesting. I like that. I've been branching out into like learning about different styles of ads. One of the ones that I've had a lot of success with clients that I've worked with is promoting some sort of lead magnet and
Mm-hmm.
using the back end email automation. So you run the ad to some sort of free resource that
Yeah.
specifically answers a question for your avatar. Then you capture the email for the free resource, and that email is used in some sort of email flow with the goal of getting somebody on a call.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very it's very similar because you're getting someone, you're not necessarily saying like sign up for coaching. It's like more of a softer like follow me or get my email list, and then it's kind of like on the back end getting them on a call.
Yeah. The other thing that I found to be beneficial, and this works whether you run an ad to it or not, just getting your face in front of more people. So it's like making a
Yeah.
post and promoting a webinar of some kind where you can add value in a face-to-face manner and then use part of that webinar to potentially sell your services or opening up conversations. I think the key here is like you're getting followers to your account with the follower conversion ad. I'm getting emails to the email list with my version
Yeah.
of the key is like how do you open conversations with more people?
Yep. Are
Um,
you asking that? Or
what's
that's
that?
like the main, are you asking that or you're saying that's
No,
the
no,
main
no. Yeah,
takeaway?
I'm saying it, but I'm also asking like how is it that you start and build these conversations with people?
Yeah. I guess if someone's following me, it's more of like, hey, are you following me? Like what had you come across my page? They say XYZ. Maybe it's like, oh, and I'm an entrepreneur and I want to lose weight. There you go, right there. That's simple as that. I have a conversation like, oh, like how long have you been trying to lose weight for? Like a just simple DM conversation. If there's a problem that they've been trying to solve for a while and haven't solved it, and like potentially I can help them. It's like, hey, like maybe, not sure if you're up for it, but would you want to hop on a call and kind of like discuss this? And if coaching is the right option for them, that's
So you'll actually privately message every person that follows you from that ad?
yeah, if appropriate too. Like if they're just following me because like they like my page and I kind of look at their page and like they're not an entrepreneur or whatever, but like with the style of targeted ad, usually I'm getting my ideal avatar. Then it's like I have a conversation with them, see if it's something I can help with. If I can, we get on a call. So that ad when I was talking about where I got a client within 4 days, it was through that exact framework right there.
Did you ever have any hesitancy in the beginning of like starting conversations with random people? Because this is something that, the coaches that I work with, they're just really scared of talking to people that they have no connection with.
100%, 100%. I had that was like just another like that's a mindset shift on its own. But it's kind of like if I'm coming from the place of like I'm not trying to sell them, I'm trying to see if I can help. Um,
Mm,
it is a lot better. And then just like in business, the mindset of like go for no, like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take type of thing. So it's like if I'm not having a conversation and some of it's like maybe you don't really believe in your service strong enough. It's like
okay.
if I know I can help someone and I know my service I can really help them and like I see their pain points. Again, if someone's been struggling with carbs for 10 years, it's like something I can help them with in like 6 months and change their life. Like of course I want to have a conversation with them.
That's so interesting that you say that because I've always looked at sales as a service, right? So if like I believe that my service can help somebody, I'm actually doing them a disservice by not trying to add value.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I'm sure that like, and this is where it comes into the way in which you start that conversation because maybe you open the
Hmm.
conversation and the person's not necessarily interested in coaching right now. I'm sure you have a million different free resources that you could offer them and say, hey, like, here's something for free. If you're interested in learning
Exactly.
more, here you go. Maybe that captures their email and then you can, engage them in your email newsletter. Um, have you found like, I'm sure email marketing plays a large role in what you do. How do you how do you go about building your email list?
Right now, I'm not going about it, but it is something I think that, like, I've dabbled in it, and it is something I think that it is extremely valuable long term. Kind of like what you were saying with YouTube. Like, it's like a long term nurture. Like, if those that pay with their time are eventually going to pay with their money. So if someone's watching 2, 3 hours of your YouTube and like just like learning everything you do, what you do, and like love what they're doing, they're getting value. If they're paying with like their time, 3, 4 hours, like eventually they'll be a paying customer. And email is a great way to do that because it's not short form, 8-second reel type of thing.
Mhm.
I just haven't dove into that yet, but I do think it is really important. But my perspective too, I don't think many people, beginner coaches, should do that unless they're at like 20K a month. Um,
Really?
just
Why do you
because it can be more time consuming and again like long term, but
Hmm.
it's like most people don't struggle with like getting clients long term, like they need clients now.
Interesting. I've always looked at email marketing as just a very low hanging fruit in terms of creating more opportunities to touch a client or
Hmm.
touch a potential client. Also engaging your audience in ways in which are not subject to an algorithm.
Yeah.
And I actually personally don't see it as a huge time suck because it gives you the opportunity to write, to practice
No, I agree. Yeah.
communication. So like that's something I actually espoused very early on is like, hey, even if your email newsletter goes out to 50 people, let's make sure that you're writing to those 50 people in a way that engages them.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. I just think some of it's like my own, like I know where my own flaws, where it's just like I might be kind of justifying it. But I agree, just in terms of like, let's say someone's not getting clients, just that you're learning and writing content, and you can use one email to have 10 pieces of content.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's actually what I do as well. Like my initial when I started working with my first business mentor, he was like, "Listen, I want you to write 2 articles a week and I want you to pull 2 or 3 pieces of content from each one of those articles and that's going to be your social media content." I was like,
yeah,
"Wow, it's that easy?" Like,
yeah,
yeah, it is that easy. One of your pieces of email of content could actually just be you reading your article
yeah.
to a camera.
Yeah, no, no, exactly. And it is something I've been kind of working on the past couple months. Like I have a ton of emails, and some of my pieces of content in like April and March are just like from the email. It's just like I haven't done the list or anything yet. But I
Interesting.
do see a lot of value in that as well.
I think that'll be
Different ways
really
to kind of skin a cat, but
Oh, for sure. I see that email list for you, especially the number of people that you've touched over the course of your career being incredibly valuable when it comes to building the roster of the coach or coaches who end up working for you for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Another thing I wanted to talk to you about is I know you're a big productivity guy. I know you're a big time management guy. So I wanted to ask like how do you go about scheduling and planning your workday in a way that allows you to accomplish the most amount of stuff? What are some strategies that are like key to your ability to produce?
One thing I think is super underrated, one of the first things, is my morning routine is kind of like how fast can I start work? And I think this is like 3, 4 years ago when I was working with hybrid, and I was, long story short, I booked an Airbnb to Miami for 3 months, and the day I got there, there was a hurricane. The Airbnb canceled, so I stayed at Steffi and Hayden's for 3 months, which like very thankful for that opportunity, and it was great. Um, Obviously, they have a lot of friends, and during one of that time, Jordan Shallow was visiting. This is like before I didn't know a thing about Jordan, so it's kind of like me and him crashing at Steffi and Hayden's. And
Yeah.
every day I would wake up. I would wake up. This is when I had nutrition clients at 5 a.m. and literally just walk to Starbucks, get a coffee, and start my workday. So
Hmm.
I would wake up at 5. I'm already at Starbucks, coffee in hand at 5:15. It's a 15-minute walk.
Hmm.
Um, and right away, it's kind of like I'm getting in the most important task, which at that time was client check-ins, and I had the most. I had 200 clients, so for me, it's about 30 to 40 check-ins a day, and I'm just like, let me finish this. And I
For people
personally
who aren't
like,
aware, that's a shit ton of check-ins.
it's a lot. You were one of those check-ins.
Yeah, and I mean, and just to throw this out there, when he's saying 200 clients and 30, 40 check-ins a day, like these are robust check-ins. You're answering all the questions that they're asking. You're assessing all the information that's being presented to you. Like this isn't to say that it was 200 clients like phoning it in. You're
Yeah,
coaching, you know?
yeah. Like you kind of you have an idea of like what my
Yep,
check-ins were like. It was very.
absolutely.
I mean, you worked with me for a year, which I'm assuming you like the service if it was a year.
I did. It was
Um,
great. And listen, I will say, like, the biggest reason that I wanted to work with you, what number one, we were training together pretty often. So it was, you're front of mind and I knew you were a good coach. But number two, I think a lot of people undervalue the emotional disposition of the person that they're working with. I was going through a very challenging time in my life and you're a very level headed
mhm.
person. So I was like, if this guy can be as level headed as I want to be, then this is going to be an influence that I need to have to kind of even myself out during this time of kind of emotional chaos. So yeah, that was just giving you your flowers, bro.
Yeah, no, thank you.
No problem.
But for me at that time, it was client work first, then it was content, and I typically narrowed it down to like, now I've narrowed it down to like client work. Let me get that done, because like you don't want to kind of like leave your clients hanging.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like I'm treating my next client as like my potential last client, so they're going to do the marketing for me. So I'm going to give the best service possible. So it's client work first thing, which usually takes about an hour and a half. Nowadays, now I don't have 200 clients,
Mm-hmm.
so an hour and a half, and then I'm breaking it down to like basically four C's. You could say client, content, conversations, calls.
Cool.
Conversations meaning like DMs, or just like people in the street,
Mm-hmm.
people in the gym. I've had clients who I've met in the gym, kind of like yourself, like we kind of like met in the gym. But so doing client work, doing content stuff, which is going to help my business long term, and then like the DMs and conversations later in the afternoon, because it's a lot easier to like who's going to hop on a call at 8 a.m. versus a call at like 4 p.m. Like I do calls later after
Yeah.
like the work where I really need to like focus and be dialed in.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how I run things.
I love that you said that your morning routine is getting to work as fast as possible, because listen, I've gone through periods in my life where I think when we were working together, I was like I said, going through a bit of an emotional roller coaster for myself. So my morning routine was like, how do I regulate myself to be able to function during the day? My morning routine was like an hour and a half long. It was like I wake up, I make a coffee, I take that coffee on a walk, then I come home, I meditate, I do some journaling, and then I start my workday. Now I wake up, I make my coffee, I sit at my desk, and I'm typing. It,
The mindset, I don't know. I just kind of like came to it. This was like 4 years ago. One of the things I was saying with Jordan Shallow, like he saw me do this, and he's like, "Fuck! Like this is what I do. Like this is different." I think what kind of caught him off guard. He's like, "You're out the door before me, and like get your work stuff. Like this
and
is
Jordan's a
crazy."
workhorse, man. Jordan, like
No, Jordan is.
I've known Jordan for like 12 years now. The dude's a machine.
Yeah,
And like I'm sure being around that sort of productivity was inspiring for sure.
yeah. I think it was just cool because we just like connected in that way. Like I was walking out the door once, and he's like, "Hey, you're up. Like, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm walking to Starbucks. I'm going to work." He's like, "I'm walking to Starbucks and going to work." He's like, "Let's do it." And then for
Did
the
we
next
just
two
become
weeks,
best friends?
yeah, for the next 2 weeks, we're waking up, walking to Starbucks at 5 a.m., just cranking out work. But um, a lot of times, like from my perspective, people are doing like morning routines to like lower their stress and feel better before they work.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that helps my stress is like, imagine you just finish all your work for the day. Like, how stress relieving is that?
Yep. I
How
feel
stress relieving is like if once I finish all my client work check-ins, like if I want it, I'm done for the day. Like
yep.
that's my meditation. I'm done
Yeah.
for the day.
And I think that's knowing your psychology, knowing your personal psychology. And I mentioned when I was going through that challenging time, regulating myself did allow me to complete the work.
Mm-hmm.
And now getting my work, number one, the biggest reason I like working first thing in the morning is because no one bothers me,
Yeah.
right? From 5 to 7 a.m., I have all the time in the world to do anything that I want. I'm usually the most creative and switched on first thing in the morning, especially. Then I know personally that I really like doing check ins. So I actually save my check ins till the last thing I do during the day. So
Okay.
when my energy is lowest, I get lifted up by doing my check-ins. So I'm like, okay, cool. It's 7:30. I'm going to do some check-ins. I'm going to finish my night. It usually takes me on the days I have check-ins like an hour to an hour and a half. So by 8:30, 9 o'clock, I'm done work. I can close my laptop. And I was like and like I said, my day starts at 5. It finishes at 9. So that's a 16-hour workday. But
Yeah.
it's mine.
Yeah. I like that.
I also think too, like I love my job. So I'm really the stress that I feel is more so just pressure I put on myself to do the things that I
Hmm.
love doing.
Hmm.
And I'm sure it's the same for you. Like you would probably have killed 5 years ago for the stress that you have today.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And kind of like the stress I feel like getting that client work done. It's not like I want to just like, I don't like my clients. It's more of like, I want to get them the answers or like feedback back as soon as possible. Cause it's like, it's almost like I'm telling myself a story. If I don't get it back as soon as possible, they'll quit. But, um,
If that's the
so I
pressure
get
that
that
you
done
need.
as, yeah, it can be helpful. And then it's like client work, creative work. Cause again, like no one's bothering you at 5 a.m.
Yep.
or when I did finish my client work, usually at 6:30, when no one's bothering you,
Yep.
creative work. And then I just found like being on calls with my clients or like potential clients later in the day kind of like brings my energy back up as well. And
I
I'm
love
just
it.
not, I'm personally not as creative in the evening.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. Simon, for those who don't know, you were one of the strongest people on the planet at one point. When are you going to be strong again, dude?
Probably not again. I don't know.
What?
Yeah,
No.
yeah, no, it's crazy I had a very like quick career with powerlifting. Super grateful for it. And I think a part of it was just to like prove to myself that
Hmm.
I could. And once I kind of did, it's like, I'm done with it. I just didn't find it as like fun, I guess you could say, or rewarding.
Okay.
I just, yeah, my goal was like, I didn't know what powerlifting was until I was 22. And that's when I started.
Right.
Um, I saw one of my friends compete, Steve.
Yep.
You know Steve,
Yep.
and I was like, "There's a sport for like lifting heavy, like squat, bench, deadlift." And a month after I signed up for a meet. 2 days after I saw him, and I competed at a local meet. And I think I had my Wilks at the first meet, so I saw his meet. 4 weeks later, competed. My Wilks was like 4:45, and someone's like,
That's
dude, you just totaled like 2.5 kilos under the national record. I was like, really? like, yeah, you like, are you going to do like provincials? I'm like, what's provincials? And they're like, oh, it's so and so. And yeah, so I just got into it really fast. And like, I don't know, throughout my lifting career, I always knew I was like strong, but I just didn't know how I could like compare. And powerlifting shot, I compare. And a year, my first meet was June 2017
Mhm.
or 2018. My first local meet, Worlds was exactly a year later, like 3 days off. So like June 2017, if I'm getting that, or June 2018, and then Worlds was June 2019. I came second at Worlds, and I was just kind of like, after that, I was like, I think I proved to myself. I still competed after that, but
Yeah.
I didn't have as much motivation or like desire to lift heavy.
Okay. Then the question is, when are you going to be like super jacked and tanned again?
I'm pretty jacked now, maybe not as tan, but still kind of jacked. But it's just not as big as that priority. Kind of just like maintaining a certain level of jackness.
You got to walk the walk, right?
Yeah, no, that is important, of course.
Yeah. I'm still living in my mind of like, can I still be strong? So I'm gonna give it another shot.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I see you're lifting again, lifting heavy, looking more jacked and strong.
Trying, man. I'm trying. I'll be 37 this year. So, and
Okay.
I know that Liv and I want to start a family. So I want to make sure that I kind of get it out of my system so I can be a dad. And that's a very big motivator for me. Um, Let me ask you this. What's the big motivating factor for you? Why do you push as hard as you do?
In terms of training or like business?
Life. In life. You've never been someone to sit still. You've always been someone who I've known to, look to elevate himself. What is that drive?
Yeah, I might get a little emotional, but I think just like my parents did so much for me. Uh, like I'm from a very small town up north, like Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. Winter, cold months, super high suicide rate. My parents sent me to private school. just knowing like that's going to be the best for me. And I just want to make something out of it,
I
I
love
guess,
that,
and
man.
be able to give back to them. And even just coaching entrepreneurs, like my uncle was a really successful entrepreneur and like didn't have his fitness or nutrition game, like I guess we could say dialed in, and like he had a very successful business, like passed away at 50. It's like, I don't want, I
Yeah.
don't want that to happen. I think that's another reason why I like resonate with coaching other entrepreneurs. Like these people are making a lot of money and doing a lot of good for the world, not only making a lot of money, but usually like doing a lot of good for the world. And that's why they're making more money. And like, I don't want to see people like that go. So
I like
that's a
that.
big motivator, and just giving back to my parents. That's always in the back of my mind.
Love that. Love that. So let's bring this back to, some stupidity, because I like to end the podcast with a couple stupid questions. If you had to go for a PR today in the gym, what song are you playing?
Um, Maybe something like All That Remains,
Okay.
something like that.
Some new metal,
Yeah, something heavy metal. It depends on the vibe. It could just be like also just super like sad and soft.
like Evanescence.
Yes, yeah, something like that, or like that Post Malone song. What's it called? I don't know.
I do
Just like a
not
set.
not listen to Post Malone.
Yeah, something like it depends on the vibe. But
That's
yeah,
so
probably
funny.
something like heavy metal.
Um, what is the thing you are most excited for right now?
Yeah, so I'm working one of my clients again who has a like a I don't even know how many figures you want to say. Whatever, however many figures is $100 million company. Um, so I'm white labeling an app for him, and I'm coaching his employees with a template
Oh,
program.
very cool. Very cool.
So that I'm super excited about that, not only for the opportunity, but he has so many connections, and he's like, I could get you to do this for other people. And it's like, his customer, his company's supplement. So it's like health and fitness. And he's like, if our employees love it and see a lot of progress, potentially we can release this to our customers, which they
Dude,
obviously have a lot.
tremendous, tremendous opportunity. The last question is, who is one person that you would like to see me interview on my podcast? But the caveat is that you have to help me get them on the podcast.
That's a good one. So I saw there was someone who I did have in mind, but you already did a podcast with them.
Who is that?
Trevor Cashy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. A long time
He's
ago.
great. Uh,
That was the hardest
er,
podcast I've ever had to do.
in what way?
Dude, he grilled me on every word I said to him. Like I would use a word and he'd be like, "Well, Paul, the real meaning of that word is actually this, and we need to reframe our thought process to." And I was like, "Bro, like it was
He's
hard."
big on that. He's
He's
big on that.
super
And
big on
that's kind of
language.
why on language and behavior change. And I watched that podcast that you had with him, and I
Yeah.
loved it. That's why I was looking it up.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of someone. I have someone in mind. One of my clients. He's
Okay.
super low key on Instagram. Like but he's a COO of a multi-million-dollar company. His name's Jonathan Ola. Business wise, extremely smart. Like I'm talking like his kind of company spending $100,000 a day on ads. Like super smart, young guy, 34,
Oh wow.
COO of a huge company. Super smart, wants to get into the podcast game. Has a little bit of fear around it because he's never really posted content. So
Dude, I
this is a
would
good
love that
start because he
intro.
wants to get into a podcast game. Extremely smart,
Dude, I really
mind
appreciate your
blowing.
time, Simon. And I'm gonna have links to where anyone can find you in the show notes. But do you have any parting words of wisdom for the audience?
Wisdom. I mean, if people are listening, I guess. Yeah, in terms of like, I guess who are your main listeners? Coaches,
Coaches, yeah.
coaches. I guess just kind of like think. This is cliche, just like thinking outside the box. Like, don't be stuck in the like. I have to charge $100 for powerlifting coaching and stuff like that, and thinking outside the box and yeah, charge what you're worth. I know even at one point
Yep.
when we were working together, you might have charged like $100. I'm just like, dude, your service is valued way more than that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. That was probably like so that was 2019. Yeah, it's probably charging like $175 a month.
Yeah, and I'm like, how? Like
Yeah.
I would pay you more. And it's just like the limiting beliefs. I'm just like, well, no one else is gonna
Yep,
try it.
absolutely. Absolutely. Dude, I really appreciate your time. Thank you everyone for joining us. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and don't forget lifetime access to Coach's Corner U, $300 off with the code Beefcake300. And if people don't understand the reference, Beefcake is my 10-year-old bulldog who is very, very cute. Simon, thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thank
Everyone,
you.
we'll catch you on the next one.